Purposeful play, raising boys who learn by doing. Is your son constantly in motion, building forts, or turning everything into a game? In this episode of the Mothers of Boys Survival Guide, we explore how purposeful play fuels brain development, supports emotional growth, and helps boys learn by doing, mess and all.
Kathy Bear, a veteran kindergarten teacher with decades of classroom experience, joins us to break down the concept of purposeful play and explain why it's not just fun, it's a vital part of how young children, especially boys, grow, learn, and thrive. Kathy played a key role in introducing a full-day, play-based kindergarten curriculum to her school district in Pennsylvania, a model that has since been emulated by other schools. Over the years, she's served on numerous educational committees, opened her classroom to neighboring district leaders, provided professional development for fellow educators, and mentored the next generation of teachers. Kathy is also the mother of 3 boys. Welcome to the mob, Kathy.
Woohoo!
Woo! I survived. So thank you for having me, Susie and Cheryl. So excited to be here. Ben Franklin has a saying that says, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I found that in teaching and in motherhood. And little did I know how teaching really helped me become a better parent of boys. Working with boys in my classroom really helped me be a better parent. But also once I became a parent, it helped me become a better teacher. So thank you again for having me. Looking forward to sharing all the things we do about play, the power of play.
Yeah, I'm excited about this topic because I am still sort of a 10-year-old at heart and still love to play.
So, Kathy, what is purposeful play and how is it different from like free play or traditional structured learning or just fooling around?
Well, play is a child's job, just like teaching was mine. Cheryl, you were in communications and you're an author. Everybody has a job, but a child's job is to play. And it's through play they learn best about the world around them. There is something called free play. Free play is, you can think, oh, they go out and they play freely. It's child initiated, it's child directed, and there are no learning goals. Purposeful play is adult initiated, child directed, and there are learning goals. Okay. Ben Franklin had another saying that I love. Tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand. Purposeful play involves students in the learning. It is so important that they are engaged in learning. It is data proven that when kids are engaged and happy and joyful, they actually learn better. So 36 years ago, when I started teaching kindergarten, we were a half-day program. And we did some academics and we did some play. There was a kitchen set, blocks, Legos, and the kids would go off. We would call that free play. And then as years went on, state standards were added on. And oh my goodness, in just a half day, there was no more time to play. And play sets were disappearing from classrooms and Legos were disappearing as if childhood became obsolete. Mm-hmm. And it was very stressful for kids. We know kids need to play. They learn best, especially boys. They need that movement to sit there and listen to the state standards and being taught through scripted programs. Teachers were stressed. Kids were stressed. Yeah. So we wanted to go to full day program, which was great, but teachers got together and we said, we don't want the new kindergarten to be like a first grade. We want to come back and have more play. We need playtime. So we consulted with Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, who's a psychology professor at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay. She's also an author of many wonderful books. One of them maybe you have heard of, Einstein Never Used Flashcards. Mm-hmm. If you really think about that title, yeah, you could sit there and do flashcards and they know a lot, but he didn't do it. He used his curiosity. He played to create things. So we wanted to do full day. So we consulted her and she taught us about the power of play and how play can be, embedded in everything we do in reading activities and math activities and in science and social studies. So after a whole year of developing it, we then implemented it and it was wonderful. And the power that play has, she says, and she talks about it often, that play helps with the 4 C's that will help you be successful in corporate life and real world: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. That's what corporations are looking for, especially even after COVID. Everybody, there was no communication, there was no collaboration, there was no play. And they now know, and we all know, I've seen it. Play is powerful, and it actually even bridges those gaps that they were missing for so long.
Give us an example of how you changed those things in your classroom from the standpoint of making it purposeful play. What's an example of purposeful play versus free play?
Okay, so in the classroom, if we're embedding it into the state standards, instead of just saying, okay, do a letter dictation, build me the letter A, and they write it down, they could do it in sand. They can build it with Legos. So we called it like the finger gym activities. In the reading center, there's choice. There's always choices too. That's part of the play, that they have choices, because it gives them, like I said, that power, that agency to pick and control what they're learning and what they know they're good at to get better. So they could choose, like in the reading center, they could maybe read a book, or they can use puppets to help retell the story. They didn't know how to write it yet, but they can use puppets to retell it, because you can't actually write yet until you have the spoken language down pat. So you kind of embed more playful things. And it's not like I didn't do those things before, but it became more prevalent that we know, wow, look at my test scores, because the more they were talking instead of me talking, their writing scores went up because they knew how to tell a story, which then helped them write a story. So all the scores started going up. So
Right.
that's what, and then in social studies and science, we would teach content through play also. So that would be our end of the day. And with that, we would use dramatic play and STEM activities and art activities and movement activities and music. So if we were learning, say, in October about fire safety, I would read books during the reading time and find out their prior knowledge. And some kids, believe it or not, never knew what 911 was, never been to a fire station, and thank God never had a fire at their house. But how can we ask them to write about something that they don't know anything about? So playing it in the dramatic area and role playing it, help them understand, what does a firefighter really do? What is their job? So I said, how can we learn more about a firefighter? So we created made our room into a fire station. So the dramatic play area, where there was a kitchen set, we had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister, like little roll necklaces that we would use. And they could be a mom or dad. So maybe they were burning the dinner or something. We had a little pet dog and stuffed animal, cat. And then we had a 911 operator. We had a little keyboard that they have to type on, in headsets. And then we had the firefighters. And then we painted a box to be the fire truck, like a little Fred Flintstone firebox that they could, walk into after they painted it. Little pool noodles were the fire, the hose. And they made up scenarios and they acted on them. So they had to decide as a group who was what and what the emergency was going to be.
So, Kathy, you must have, I gave you a copy of my book, Mother's a Boy Survival Guide. You must have really laughed when you read the story of how my kindergartner, Ernest, called the police
Oh,
when
yes.
my husband and I were in the hot tub next door and he couldn't find us. Thank you. Thank you very much
Oh my gosh.
for purposeful play,
Absolutely.
teaching him
Was it
to
you that
call
told me that?
911. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they learn, and they're listening. And like I said,
Yes,
play
they did.
mimics real life. That's what it is. Play mimics real life.
Yep.
Kathy, I think that your students probably didn't even want to go home. They were having so much fun.
Oh, they did. They did. It
That
was
sounds amazing.
wonderful. So, and then we had like a STEM activity where they were building fire out of red Solo cups, and it's amazing how they think, their brains. Some of them were wide fires, some of them were high fires, but that's how they learn vocabulary, math vocabulary: top, middle, bottom, heavy,
Right.
light. So
Yeah.
purposeful play is so important that you just embed it. And then we had like an art activity where they had to make paint and they learned about mixing colors. And then they had puppets, and then they had to write a story about what they do. They had to practice their phone number so they could call 911. So learning is embedded in play
Mhm.
and in the role playing.
Right.
It was really fascinating.
So we recently released a podcast on kinesthetic learning and how movement fuels the brain development, and is purposeful play a similar tool and concept? And I'm also curious about the age. Like, is there Is this a younger kid thing, or does it go all through to adulthood? And what kind of tips you might have for managing a house full of, as you had three boys, I'm sure you had those days when you were just packed with a house full of kids.
Yep. Kinesthetic learning, okay, is a learning style. We all have different learning styles. Kids learn differently. Some kids are auditory learners, some are visual learners. But that kinesthetic, yeah, everybody needs to get up and move. Everybody needs movement. But some kids definitely, and boys, a lot of boys too, especially in kindergarten and even in adulthood, they need to move. And I would incorporate that kinesthetic into my classroom. Instead of, like I said, writing on a piece of paper the letter C or B, we could do sky writing, and they need that movement. And that movement, and that repeating of it too will help your brain remember. So that's how kids can learn and remember. Instead of me telling them how to plant a seed and what a seed needs to grow, they may listen to it, but they totally forget it and can't put the sequence back in order. So if I gave them a shovel and a bucket and said, okay, let's go do it, and then that digging in that dirt and planting the seed and pouring that water, that's all that kinesthetic hands-on learning. And I did that, yes, at my house too. I mean, we could have a sand pile out back. I had the kids write their name in the sand, and that's all that, sensory too, that kinesthetic movement. Fill up your dump truck. How many, buckets, of sand to fill your dump truck? I'm giving it a purpose, like, and using kinesthetic, activities and learning.
We are in, the midst of summer, so kids are home now. Can you suggest some certain activities that would be purposeful play for them? And is there anything at home as far as materials or things that would be helpful to have to help with this purposeful play?
Well, as I said earlier, being a teacher really helped me be a better boy mom, and being a boy mom helped me be a better teacher. So I really
Hmm.
do. I have the number one toy that every mom needs, every household, and every classroom needs. You ready? Can you
Bring
guess
it
it?
on. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a box.
a
Yeah,
box,
I
A box.
know.
a big box, a
I,
little
Any size
box.
box. Any box.
I I recently saw a refrigerator box on the street, and I'm thinking, what a lost opportunity. I mean, that is like days of fun right there.
Absolutely. So speaking of refrigerator box, that's what I was going to share a story with my boys too. We got a new refrigerator, and of course, it's longer and wider. It's on the ground. What happened to them? All three of them were jumping in, rowing the boat, and so forth. And the power of play with the box. Okay, so I helped build a little blueprint for them and said, what are you going to do with this? What do you want to do? And they're like, can we paint it? I said, okay, so let's get some paint. And they said, can we be pirates instead of sailors? I said, sure. And they're like, what? I asked them too, again, like, I can initiate it, but they're directing it. Okay, well, you would be a pirate. What do you need? Well, we need a bandana. Well, I didn't have any bandanas, but I had headbands. So they had the
Hmm.
headbands in. They said, oh, can we put beards on using marker? And I'm like, okay, no. But I said, I think I have something in my drawer, and it was mascara. So, and then a toilet paper thing for the telescope. So I
Right.
always kept a box too of little house supplies, napkins, paper towels, toilet paper holders, paper towel holders. For the water, they went through my thing, and I had birthday streamers, and they were blue. That was the water. So, and then we planned activities they could do. They wanted a piece of paper to make a treasure map, and then they all took turns hiding their treasure, and everybody had to follow their map. And it was just great that I wasn't following them around. The kids made a map. Like, my oldest one made a map, then my other two had to follow that map to find the treasure, and then my
Hmm.
youngest one made a map, and then the other ones had to go find it. So, and that's without using Google Maps. And that's where that creativity and that critical thinking comes in, and how far is it, how many steps is it? So definitely a box is a great thing.
You're obviously a very super creative person, super creative mom, so you have all these ideas. But as you're talking, what I'm realizing is even if a mom doesn't think that way, if you just put those questions out to your children, like, okay, let's do a pirate theme day today. What do you think we need? You don't the mom doesn't have to be the one coming up with the ideas.
That's
You
right.
can just because they're going to say, "Oh, I have this," or "I have that." So as we're talking, I'm realizing, there's so many possibilities
It's
with
ownership.
this, with all different ages.
It
I was
does.
thinking when you were saying bandana, my boys would have been happy putting underwear on their head. I mean, that was just like a regular
Right.
thing, right?
Whatever you
Like,
have, it works. And that's what power to play and pretend. And believe it or not, that pretend does mimic real life that you are, but it's critical thinking skills. What are you going to do? It's just
right.
it's wonderful to see how they all interact, and especially with different ages. In my sons at home.
So Kathy, what age do you think is ideal for purposeful play, and how does it impact their brain development?
Well, I think play is good for any age. I mean, any adult too would rather do something that's play based and engaging instead of sitting there and being lectured at. We do all learn better if we're engaged
Hmm.
and showing happiness, and it just promotes brain development there. But there are stages that we want to go through. Everybody from infancy to adulthood, we go through, and we heard about unoccupied play. That's when like a baby's just flapping their arms and their legs. And then there's solitary play where, you give a baby a little pacifier or a duck, and we all know what happens to that. It goes in their mouth, and that's how they explore. That's their playing. They're exploring their environment. And then there's onlooker play that you see sometimes kids are just kind of sitting out. They're not playing. And you can even say, do you want to play? And they'll say no, but they're just watching. And that's like what animals did too. They watch their adults
Hmm.
and see how to do. That's onlooker play. And then there's the parallel play stage where, both of them could be playing blocks, but there's no communication. They'd be watching each other and eyeing each other up, thinking, and then seeing maybe one do one and they may mimic it, but there's no communication going on. Then there's associative play where that's when the language starts to come, that they'll be playing parallel blocks and they'll start to say, oh, well, can I have that block, or how did you do that? But then the final stage would be that social and cooperative play. And that's where I said corporations want you to be, where you can collaborate, you can communicate, you can think critically and be creative. And we would hope, by the end of kindergarten, we were hoping we would have kids at that stage. We even had a little checklist to see if they were there yet.
Hmm.
That would be the goal. But if they're not, okay, play builds and fills those gaps, those learning gaps. And we hope if it didn't happen in kindergarten, we were trying to promote more playful learning in first grade. And even in second grade, we know it's the power of play. It really bridges the gaps. And the one thing I love too, the best about play, and it's good for everybody, it evens out the playing field. So I had kids who were readers. I have kids who never even, didn't know any of their letters. But when they come together, they bring what they know and they're comfortable in that environment, and then they learn from each other. So literally any age is good for play, but boys definitely, I said, I saw so much growth when I started doing play-based learning, and then that dramatic play too, when the kids took on those roles, just a lot of growth. Play is very powerful.
It sounds like the moms need to be involved or the parent needs to be involved. Is there any kind of direction you can give if it's just a really busy time and the mom doesn't or dad does, they don't have time to orchestrate it?
Absolutely. Parenting is hard work. I said you love it, but it is a lot of work. But I definitely
Mhm.
believe kids need downtime too. They need quiet time. They don't need everything doesn't need to be scheduled, but they also need some play that more structured that's, facilitated or initiated by an adult, but directed by them. And I think if we give them more opportunities, the more we got into it, even in my classroom, the kids were able to plan better. So once we planned our fire station, in October, in November, we did a grocery store. They got into that habit. They knew that it took 1 week, believe it or not, to plan everything and create all our materials. And then they had 2 weeks of it to play the different things. So I think what a parent could do is make a little blueprint and say, okay, what do you want to do next week for the summer? Let's do things about ocean. What could we do? And you write it down. Okay, we could go to the Camden Aquarium. Okay, how can we make an aquarium? We could use our pool or get a pool. We could go fishing. We could make some games. Just kind of be creative and have them, fill a box of things that they think would support that play. Uh, but another important thing to do is just like that planning and prep with the materials. I think what really helped me be a better parent was teaching first. It really did, because I had to establish rules. Okay. There's definitely rules, and I had them posted on the wall. So of course, when I came home and I had boys and, again, 2, 3 different age groups, which makes it harder, I posted our rules. And I said, if you're going to go out and play, and that way I don't have to constantly put out fires, I called, uh, if there was a problem, it could be a candle fire or there's a house fire. So a
Mm.
candle fire would mean, maybe somebody was upset that you didn't get to go first. So a candle fire would mean you have to do it on your own. It's something you can do on your own. So take a deep breath,
Mhm.
blow out that candle. If it didn't work, maybe say, hey, we could do rock, paper, scissors, shoot. So I taught them strategies too of if there's a problem
Mm.
that arose, these are things you should be able to work out. But of course, like hitting would be a house fire. And I'd come running and put the fire out. And they learned that if I came, firefighter mom or firefighter bear came, and put the fire out, play was over for that group. And they
Right.
Mhm.
have quiet time. So they learned. I could hear my boys even out in the yard saying, no, no, don't tell mom yet. We can do it. We'll figure this out. Let's make it a candle fire. So I could hear those working. So I didn't have
Yeah.
to, go put out the fires. But just like you, Susie, I had an exuberance. And let me tell you,
Mhm.
he screamed fire more often than any of the other times. And I said, is that called middle child syndrome too? Um, but I think if you establish rules ahead of time, and if you plan out your play ahead of time and make them create their play, and then different things you can do each day. Maybe there's an art activity that they can go along with their fish theme or their ocean theme, or we can do a sports theme. Or one year I did a camp whole lot of fun, or I guess I did it like 10 years in a row with my boys. Camp whole lot of fun where they had to invite, a friend over for camping in the backyard, and they had to make a sign, and then they had to make
Mhm.
maps and an activity, and they had to write their own ghost story to say at night. Like they were involved in it, and that kept them so busy, and it was fun. And that's what it
Right.
is. It's playful, it's learning, and it's fun. Fun for me too, because I said I could put my feet back in the classroom a couple times and do this, going, best part of my day. Like they were,
Yeah.
and I could hear them. Yeah, it was
Watching
great.
them learn. Well, during your 36 years as a kindergarten teacher, was there one powerful moment that you witnessed in your classroom that kind of showed the magic of play-based learning?
Wow, let me tell you, there were many moments. I tell you,
Yeah.
but since we're talking about purposeful play, there was definitely one because in the last 10 years we were doing that purposeful play program in our district. Um, Kindergarten is like the first year of, for parents too entering into the school district. So I'm not just breaking a child in, I'm breaking in the parent. And
Mhm.
I had some of those helicopter parents and submarine parents. I definitely liked better at times,
Mm.
but I had a little boy coming in and I had an IEP meeting. He was autistic and very nonverbal, but they really wanted him to be included. But they were very worried. And so I said, okay, we're going to do this. Okay, then you're going to have to trust me. So I said, give me 6 weeks. I said, I don't want an email every day saying, oh my gosh, how's he doing? I said, if something's going on, I will definitely email you, but just give me 6 weeks because it takes 6 weeks to really acclimate to a new learning environment. So give me 6 weeks. Well, he wasn't talking in circle time. He really wasn't talking to anybody at lunch. So, I make those assignments and things to have him, be supported and so forth. The speech teacher was pulling him out and he's not talking, but he's going out with another person from a different, classroom and doesn't know who they are. So he's not talking. But when we started doing our play-based program, and that started like after 6 weeks of it almost in October again, firefighter station, the kids get to pick where they go. And he went over, I remember the first time, ran over to the Fire Dramatic Play Center, threw on the firefighter necklace because we had little roll
Mhm.
necklaces, and really hadn't said anything. If I had to, I really had to ask him a question to see if he knew something. But when he threw that necklace on, he was unbelievable. His voice changed. He became in charge. He was talking to the other firefighter like this. We need to clean the truck.
Aw.
We need to make sure it's ready. So he was talking full sentences, which they were saying in his goal. One of his goals was to be able to complete a sentence and use the right, pronouns. And I'm thinking he's talking full sentences, and he's saying we need to
Right.
do this. And then he's like, we have to wait for the 911 call. Well, the 911 call came in, and he's answering it. And he's talking to the 911 operator, and it was a cat needed rescuing. So they get in their little Flintstone fire truck, he and the other firefighter, and they had their little hoses, and they get up to the little thing. They climb the little ladder that I had a step ladder, and they had painted a tree, and then we had a little shelf, and that's where they had put the cat. That was the scenario they had created, the people that called 911. Well, he climbed up that ladder, and the family, the mom and the dad, roll necklace people were all clapping, yay. He takes the cat down, he's petting the cat, and in his nicest voice, I got you. You're
Aw.
okay.
Oh.
I'm going to take
Aw.
you home, kitty. And he was talking so nicely. Role playing, power of play. So
Right.
I was like, wow. And thank goodness I do film some of my play things. I would share it on a platform called Seesaw. And when that parent saw that, I mean, tears. I mean, I was crying. I had the
Hmm.
speech teacher come
Wow, I
down.
feel like I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
wonderful story.
The speech
Aw.
teacher should come down, and where they're comfortable, that's where they learn best. And when we talked
Hmm.
about those 4 C's, collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, in my
Mhm.
classroom, because of that one student too, I thought about it built a sense of community, another C, and it
Hmm.
Mhm.
created confidence and provided comfort. And it's going to help, create those contributing citizens that can compete in this new crazy world with AI too. And then the rest of the year, oh my goodness, he was amazing. So I just think
Hmm.
like the power of play and also the gift of time. And that's what we need to do and give some boys the gift of time to really find where they go and feel good about themselves. So yeah, he was definitely one in my little,
Mm.
that I will always remember and think, wow, the power of play.
I love, love, love that story. That is just fabulous.
Mhm.
Um,
Aw.
so Kathy, when my kids were really little, Play-Doh was a big thing. That was the way I cooked dinner. So I would have them help me make Play-Doh, and then I'd strap exuberance into his chair so that he couldn't leave. And I would just give him the Play-Doh to do whatever. And then Ernest, the older son, I had all these little cookie cutters and maybe a roller and you know, he would keep busy too, and so I could cook dinner. So, do you have other suggestions like that for moms to is there something else you could do with Play-Doh?
Well, Play-Doh is great. It's definitely a sensory seeking things, and I guess that pressing down on the Play-Doh and pushing out and using letters, they could press out the letters and so
Mhm.
forth. That's like proprioceptive, that pressing and that pressure, and it helps your brain remember things too, and it's calming and it's soothing. Just like chewing gum and rocking in a chair, there's vestibular that calms your body. So yeah, when they're
Right.
cooking dinner, yeah, Play-Doh is great. Cutting straws. People are always afraid to give kids scissors. Well, there's blood scissors, but if you teach them how to handle scissors correctly, but there's like the cardboard straws and cutting them, it's harder and they're working at it and it's strengthening. And then they can string the little pieces of the straw together and make a necklace or
Mm.
a bracelet and so forth. But it just that sensory, movement and that kinesthetic learning too is calming so that you can go cook dinner.
Right.
Mhm.
Love it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think people are going to be reaching out and saying, "All right, we need more. Keep giving us all these ideas. Summer's pretty long."
Camp Whole Lot of Fun. My husband used to call it Camp Whole Lot of Work. But you can do it.
Yeah. So, Kathy, as we wrap up, we ask each of our guests if they have a mantra or a guiding phrase or something that you would say to yourself or that a mom might say to herself as she's trying to get herself into the playful play mode. What would yours be?
So I used to say to my boys actually went to my elementary school where I taught.
Hmm.
And they often said to me, I was nicer to everybody else's kids, better and nicer to them than to my own kids. I'm like, well, I get paid. So they listen better. But I also told them choices you make, tell people who you are. Who are you going to be today? And every day I said that to them. And I think the way they played together at home and worked together as the three of us as a team too helped them survive better in the world. So I would say, choices you make, tell people who you are. I relied on that. I thought that helped me too to calm them and help them transition too into the real world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, love it.
That's
Fabulous.
it's very empowering for your children and very clear. Well, your kids were lucky. You were a wonderful mother. And those kindergarten kids were lucky to have you as a teacher. So
For sure. Thank you
Yeah.
for all the tips for moms for the summer and for being an incredible member of the mob, Mothers of Boys.
Yeah.
Woohoo, the boys!
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks so much, Kathy. This was such a fun podcast, and it was great talking with you. It was really so much insight and wisdom.
Well, like you
that
said,
you've
too,
offered our mob community.
moms work from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
Spelled S-O-N, right?
Susie, your book is fabulous. I wish I had read that too earlier on. So thank you for sharing, your story. I think stories are so important to share. We do support each other. It is important.
Yeah, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today. Follow the mob on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platform. Be kind to yourselves, moms, and have a great week.